Welcome to Dreamscribe, your companion on the journey to peaceful sleep. Before you drift off, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps this calming community grow. Where in the world are you tuning in from? The road stretched endlessly ahead, its cracked asphalt reflecting the pale glow of the moon. Inside the RV, the soft hum of the engine was the only sound, a steady rhythm that lulled Alex into a false sense of calm. He sat in the driver's seat, his fingers drumming lightly on the steering wheel as he glanced at the clock on the dashboard. It was just past midnight. In the back, Jess and Emma sat at the small dining table, poring over a map illuminated by the flickering light of a battery-powered lantern. Sam lounged on the couch, scrolling through his phone with a frustrated sigh. "No signal," he muttered. "Figures." Jess looked up, her brow furrowed. "Are you sure we're on the right road, Alex? This doesn't feel like the route we planned." Alex shrugged, his eyes fixed on the empty highway. "It's a shortcut. Cuts through the woods and saves us an hour." Emma glanced nervously out the window at the dense forest that bordered the road. The trees loomed like dark sentinels, their branches clawing at the night sky. "It's creepy," she said. "Are you sure this is safe?" "Relax," Alex replied with a grin. "We'll be fine. Besides, what's the worst that could happen?" As if on cue, the RV sputtered and lurched, its engine coughing violently before going silent. The sudden stillness was deafening. "What the hell?" Alex muttered, turning the key in the ignition. The engine groaned, but refused to start. Sam sat up, his eyes narrowing. "You've got to be kidding me." "No." Jess leaned over the map, her finger tracing the empty stretch of road. "There's nothing around here," she said, her voice tinged with worry. "No towns, no gas stations. Nothing." Emma hugged herself, her gaze darting to the windows. "What do we do now?" Alex sighed, grabbing a flashlight from the glove compartment. "I'll take a look," he said. "It's probably just something simple." He stepped out into the cool night air, the flashlight's beam cutting through the darkness. The forest seemed to press closer, the rustling of leaves amplified by the silence. Alex knelt by the hood, popping it open to inspect the engine. Inside the RV, the others sat in tense silence. Jess tapped her fingers against the table, her nerves fraying with each passing minute. "This is bad," she said. "We should have stayed on the main road." Sam rolled his eyes. "Yeah, well, hindsight's 20/20. A sudden loud clang echoed from outside, making them all jump. Emma clutched Jess's arm. "What was that?" Jess moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. "Alex? Everything okay out there?" she called. There was no response. Alex reappeared a moment later, his face pale. "The engine's dead," he said, his voice tight. "I don't know what's wrong with it." Sam groaned. "Great. So we're stuck here." "Not necessarily," Alex said, his tone hesitant. "There's a garage a little ways back. I saw a sign for it earlier. Said it's open 24 hours. Jess frowned. "I don't remember seeing any sign." "Well, I did," Alex said. "It's not far. We can walk there and see if someone can help." Emma shook her head, her eyes wide. "Walk? Through the woods? At night? Are you insane?" "It's that or stay here," Alex said. "Your call." The group exchanged uneasy glances before Jess sighed heavily. "Fine," she said. "Let's go. But if this turns into some horror movie crap, I'm blaming you." The group set off down the road, the flashlight casting long shadows that danced across the cracked pavement. The forest was eerily quiet, the usual sounds of crickets and rustling leaves conspicuously absent. Each step felt heavier than the last, the oppressive darkness closing in around them. "I don't like this," Emma muttered, sticking close to Jess. "It feels wrong." "It's just your imagination," Alex said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We'll be there soon." After what felt like an eternity, the faint glow of a neon sign appeared in the distance. The sign flickered erratically, its letters spelling out 24-hour garage, mechanic on duty. Relief washed over the group as they quickened their pace. The garage was an old, weathered building with a rusted metal roof and a cracked concrete lot. A lone tow truck sat parked near the entrance, its headlights dim. The air smelled of oil and damp earth, and the faint hum of electricity buzzed from the neon sign. "See," Alex said, forcing a grin. "Told you there was a garage." Jess eyed the building warily. "Yeah, but where's the mechanic?" As if in response, a figure emerged from the shadows of the garage. He was tall and thin, dressed in a grease-stained jumpsuit. His face was pale, his features sharp, and his grin stretched a little too wide. "Evening," he said, his voice smooth and friendly. "Name's Roy. What can I do for you folks?" Alex stepped forward, offering a hesitant smile. Our RV broke down a few miles back, he said. Think you can help? Roy nodded slowly, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. Sure thing, he said, but it'll take a little time. You're welcome to wait inside while I take a look. Jess hesitated. Are you sure this is a good idea? She whispered to Alex. We don't have much of a choice, Alex replied. Let's just get this over with. The interior of the garage was dimly lit, with tools and machinery scattered haphazardly across the space. The walls were lined with old photographs and faded posters, their edges curling with age. A small waiting area sat in one corner, complete with a cracked vinyl couch and a dusty coffee table. Emma wrinkled her nose. This place gives me the creeps, she said. Sam flopped onto the couch, crossing his arms. It's just a garage, he said. Nothing to freak out about. But as the group settled in, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Her eyes drifted to a locked door at the back of the garage, its surface marred with deep scratches. What do you think is back there? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jess followed her gaze, her stomach tightening. I don't know, she said, but I don't think I want to find out. The introduction sets the stage with a tense, atmospheric build-up, drawing viewers into the mysterious and unsettling world of the Midnight Mechanic. Let me know if you'd like further refinements or to proceed with the next section. The garage loomed ahead like a forgotten relic, its battered exterior illuminated by the flickering neon sign. The faint hum of electricity from the sign mingled with the occasional creak of the rusted metal roof, giving the place an air of abandonment despite its claim of being open 24 hours. The forest surrounding the lot pressed close, its dark shadows stretching toward the edges of the cracked concrete. Inside the RV, the group hesitated. The soft glow of the neon sign offered little reassurance, its light casting eerie patterns on the windshield. Emma stared out at the garage, her unease growing. This doesn't feel right, she murmured, clutching her jacket tightly. Alex, trying to maintain a facade of calm, glanced at her. It's a garage, Emma. What were you expecting? A 5-star resort. Sam leaned forward from the back seat, peering out at the garage. Still, it's weird, right? No cars. No sounds. It's like the place is waiting for us. Jess nodded, her eyes fixed on the tow truck parked near the entrance. Its headlights were off, but she swore she saw a faint glint, as if someone, or something, was watching from within. The forest felt alive, its dense trees swaying gently in the cool night breeze. But the sound of the leaves rustling wasn't soothing. It was unsettling, like a low whisper that carried no discernible words. Branches clawed at the edges of the clearing, their gnarled forms illuminated intermittently by the neon light. Rachel stepped out of the RV, her boots crunching against the gravel. She cast a wary glance at the tree-line, feeling as though the forest was holding its breath. Do you think anyone's actually out here? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex stepped beside her, holding the flashlight. He swept its beam across the lot, briefly illuminating the edge of the forest. The shadows there seemed deeper, darker, as though the light was swallowed by the trees. No one but us, he said, though he didn't sound convinced. The group pushed open the heavy metal door of the garage, its hinges groaning loudly in protest. The interior smelled of motor oil and rust, the air thick with the tang of grease. A single overhead light flickered erratically, casting long shadows that seemed to shift and twist on their own. Tools hung from pegboards along the walls, their metal surfaces gleaming faintly in the dim light. A workbench sat in the corner, cluttered with wrenches, bolts, and an assortment of unrecognizable parts. The faint sound of a clock ticking echoed through the space, its rhythm unnaturally loud in the otherwise silent garage. Jess ran her fingers along the edge of the counter, her touch leaving faint streaks in the thick layer of dust. It doesn't look like anyone's worked here in years, she said. Emma pointed to a coffee machine in the corner, its surface covered in grime. Why would a 24-hour garage look so abandoned? She asked. It doesn't make sense. It's probably just old, Alex said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Let's find the mechanic and get this over with. The waiting area was tucked into one corner of the garage, separated from the workspace by a half wall. It consisted of a cracked vinyl couch, a low table piled with outdated magazines, and a vending machine that hummed faintly, though its display was dark. Rachel picked up one of the magazines, flipping through its brittle pages. The articles were mundane, but the date on the cover caught her attention, July 1986. Guys, she said, holding up the magazine, this is from over 30 years ago. Why would they still have this here? Sam peered over her shoulder. Maybe the mechanic's a hoarder, he said, though his attempt at humor fell flat. Emma tugged at the vending machine's handle, frowning when it didn't budge. "It's like no one's been here in decades," she said. "How is this place still running?" As they explored further, the group began to notice small, unsettling details. A set of keys dangled from a hook near the counter, their metal surfaces glinting faintly in the light. The label on the keychain read "Tow Truck 1," but the handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. On the wall above the workbench hung a calendar, its pages yellowed with age. Every date was crossed out except for one, tonight. Jess pointed to the calendar, her brow furrowing. "Why is tonight the only date not crossed out?" Alex didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on a ledger sitting open on the counter. The pages were filled with names and dates, the handwriting neat and precise. But the last entry sent a chill down his spine. Harris family, 1987. No departure. Rachel leaned over his shoulder, her breath catching as she read the words. No departure? What does that mean? "I don't know," Alex said, his voice barely audible. "But I don't think it's good." The sound of footsteps echoed through the garage, heavy and deliberate. The group spun around to see Roy emerging from the shadows, his hands tucked into the pockets of his grease-stained jumpsuit. "Sorry to keep you waiting," he said, his grin as wide as ever. "Had to check the back. Your RV's got a tricky problem, but I'll fix it up in no time." Jess stepped forward, her arms crossed. "How long is it going to take?" she asked. Roy's grin widened. "Hard to say," he replied. "Could be an hour. Could be all night." The group exchanged uneasy glances. Emma tugged on Alex's sleeve, her voice low. "I don't like this," she whispered. "We should leave." Alex hesitated, his eyes darting to the RV parked outside. "We can't go anywhere without the RV," he said. "Let's just wait and see what happens." Roy's grin remained fixed as he gestured toward the waiting area. "Make yourselves comfortable," he said. "It's going to be a long night." The scene is set with a detailed and immersive description of the eerie garage, highlighting unsettling details and building an atmosphere of dread. Let me know if you'd like further refinements or to proceed with the next section. The garage's quiet hum seemed to grow louder as the group settled into the waiting area. The faint flicker of the overhead light cast shifting shadows on the walls, and the oppressive smell of oil and rust hung heavily in the air. Despite Roy's assurances, an undercurrent of unease rippled through the group. Emma fidgeted with the hem of her sweater, her eyes darting nervously to the garage's entrance. "I don't like this place," she muttered. "It feels wrong." Jess glanced at her, trying to maintain a facade of calm. "We're just spooked because it's late, and we're tired," she said. "Let's give the guy a chance to fix the RV." Alex stood near the counter, flipping through the pages of the ledger he had found earlier. His brow furrowed as he scanned the list of names and dates, each one carefully recorded. The final entry, Harris family, 1987. No departure, sent another chill down his spine. "Guys," he said, his voice tight, "there's something weird about this place. This ledger, it's like people come here and never leave." Sam leaned back on the cracked vinyl couch, his arms crossed. "Maybe they just didn't come back to sign out," he said dismissively. "Not everything's a conspiracy." But even as he spoke, his tone betrayed his unease. Roy moved through the garage with an unsettling ease, his movements slow and deliberate. Every so often he would pause, tilting his head as though listening to something only he could hear. When he returned to the group, his grin never faltered. "RV's coming along just fine," he said. "Shouldn't be much longer." Jess forced a smile. "Thanks," she said, though her voice lacked warmth. "We appreciate it." Roy's gaze lingered on her for a moment too long, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "No trouble at all," he said. "You folks are in good hands." As he walked away, Emma leaned toward Jess, her voice low. "Did you see the way he looked at you?" she whispered. "Like he was studying you." Jess nodded, her stomach twisting. "Yeah," she said. "I saw it." While Roy worked, Alex couldn't shake his curiosity about the locked door at the back of the garage. The scratches around the edges looked deep, as though someone, or something, had desperately tried to claw their way in. "Or out." "I'm going to check it out," Alex said, grabbing the flashlight from the counter. "Are you crazy?" Emma hissed. "What if Roy catches you?" "Then I'll say I got lost," Alex replied, his jaw set. "I need to know what's back there." Reluctantly, Jess followed him, her heart pounding as they approached the door. The closer they got, the stronger the smell of damp earth and decay became. Alex tried the handle, but it was locked tight. He crouched down, peering through the keyhole. "What do you see?" Jess whispered. Alex's breath hitched. "There's something in there," he said. "I think it's moving." A sudden, loud clang echoed through the garage, making them both jump. Roy's voice called out, smooth and cheerful. "Everything all right over there?" They hurried back to the waiting area, their hearts racing. As the group reconvened, the atmosphere in the garage grew heavier. The flickering light above them dimmed further, casting the room into an eerie twilight. Emma clutched her knees to her chest, her eyes wide. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. "Hear what?" Sam asked, his voice tense. "Whispers," Emma said. "It's like someone's talking, but I can't make out the words." The others strained to listen. At first, there was nothing but the faint hum of the vending machine. Then, faint and distorted, the sound emerged, a low murmur that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Alex stood, his fists clenched. "Where's that coming from?" he demanded. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, their tone almost pleading. The words were still indistinct, but one phrase stood out clearly: "Don't stay." Jess decided to distract herself by exploring the garage further. She approached a bulletin board near the workbench, her eyes scanning the papers and photographs pinned to it. Most of the pictures were old and faded, showing smiling families standing beside their vehicles. But as she looked closer, her blood ran cold. In each photograph, there was a figure standing in the background, a tall, thin man with an unnervingly wide grin. He was always partially obscured, but his presence was unmistakable. "Alex," Jess called, her voice trembling. "You need to see this." He joined her, his face darkening as he studied the photos. "It's him," he said. "It's Roy." Emma and Sam crowded around, their expressions horrified. "How is that possible?" Emma asked. "These photos are decades old." "I don't know," Alex said, his voice grim. "But I think we're in serious trouble." The static from the garage's old radio suddenly erupted, cutting through the tense silence. The group turned to it, their nerves frayed. Amid the hissing, a voice began to emerge, faint at first but growing clearer with every word. "Leave, now, before it's too late." Sam grabbed the radio, trying to turn it off, but the knob wouldn't budge. The voice continued, its tone urgent. "He won't let you go. Don't trust him." The radio fell silent as abruptly as it had started. The group exchanged terrified glances. "What do we do?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Alex set his jaw. "We're getting out of here," he said. "Now." Before they could move, Roy appeared again, his grin wider than ever. "Everything all right?" he asked, his tone light but his eyes sharp. Alex stepped forward, his fists clenched. "We're leaving," he said firmly. "We'll figure out the RV on our own." Roy's smile faltered for the first time, his expression darkening. "Now, why would you want to do that?" he asked. "I've got everything under control." "No," Jess said, her voice firm. "We're done waiting." Roy's gaze swept over the group, his grin returning, though it no longer reached his eyes. "Suit yourselves," he said. "But you might regret it." As they hurried toward the door, the lights flickered violently, plunging the garage into darkness. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent, and the air grew icy cold. This section escalates the tension, layering supernatural phenomena with the growing realization that Roy and the garage are not what they seem. Let me know if you'd like further refinements, or to continue with the next section. The garage plunged into near-total darkness, the flickering light overhead finally extinguished. The whispers intensified, filling the space with an unrelenting, chaotic murmur that seemed to seep into their very bones. Alex, Jess, Emma, and Sam huddled together near the waiting area, their flashlights casting narrow beams that barely pushed back the oppressive gloom. "Okay, we need to leave," Alex said, his voice sharp and panicked. He held the flashlight in one hand, his other gripping the ledger he'd grabbed from the counter. The cryptic entries within had only deepened the mystery of their predicament. Emma nodded frantically. "The RV, it's outside. If we can get it started, we can get out of here." Sam glanced toward the shadows where Roy had last stood, his stomach twisting. "And what about him?" Jess swallowed hard, her gaze fixed on the locked door at the back of the garage. "I think the answer is back there," she said. "Whatever's going on, it's connected to that room." As if in response, the locked door creaked open slowly, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The whispers seemed to emanate from below, their chaotic chorus growing louder and more distinct. Words became clearer. "Help us. Trapped. Can't leave." "Nope," Sam said, stepping back. "Absolutely not." Jess took a shaky step forward. "We have to know," she said. "If we don't, how do we stop this?" "Stop what?" Emma snapped. "We don't even know what this is." Jess ignored her, moving toward the staircase with Alex close behind. The others hesitated before following, their steps slow and cautious. The air grew colder with every step they descended, the smell of damp earth and decay intensifying. The basement was a cavernous space, dimly lit by a single swinging bulb. Machinery filled the room, ancient, rusted devices with wires snaking across the floor and disappearing into the walls. At the center stood a large, cylindrical machine, its surface pulsating faintly with a sickly green light. "What is that?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Jess approached the machine cautiously, her flashlight beam revealing strange symbols etched into its surface. "It looks like some kind of generator," she said, "but I've never seen anything like this." The whispers grew louder, now coming from within the machine itself. Alex leaned closer, his heart pounding. "It's connected to the road," he said. "This is how it's all happening, how the road traps people." Sam pointed to a row of photographs pinned to the wall beside the machine. They were identical to the ones upstairs, each depicting travelers standing beside their vehicles, with Roy lurking in the background. But these photos were marked with dates, and stamped with a chilling word, claimed. A deep, guttural laugh echoed through the basement, freezing them in place. They turned to see Roy descending the staircase, his grin wider than ever. But as he stepped into the light, his form began to shift. His features distorted, his skin turning ashen and cracked. His eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the same sickly green light as the machine. "Welcome to the heart of it all," Roy said, his voice a low growl. "You've made it farther than most." "What are you?" Alex demanded, his voice shaking. "What is this place?" Roy chuckled, his elongated fingers brushing against the machine. "I'm just a caretaker," he said. "This machine, it feeds on travelers. It traps them on the road, siphoning their energy, their memories. And when they've given everything," he gestured to the photos, "they're claimed." Jess's stomach churned. "And you're part of it?" she asked. "You help this thing?" "I am it," Roy said, his grin stretching impossibly wide. "I've been here for decades, ensuring the machine gets what it needs. And now it needs you." "We're not staying here," Alex said, his voice firm despite his fear. "We're not going to be your next victims." Roy's laugh echoed through the basement. "You can try to leave," he said, "but the road won't let you. Not until the machine gets what it's owed." Jess's gaze darted to the machinery, her mind racing. "What if we destroy it?" she asked. "If it's connected to the road, breaking it might free us." Emma shook her head. "Destroy that thing? Are you kidding? We don't even know how." "We have to try," Jess said. She grabbed a wrench from a nearby table, her hands trembling. "It's the only way." As Jess swung the wrench at the machine, a deafening roar filled the basement. The walls shook, and the light from the machine intensified, bathing the room in an eerie glow. The whispers turned to screams, and shadowy figures began to emerge from the walls, their forms flickering like static. "They're the ones who were claimed," Alex said, his voice barely audible over the noise. "They're trapped here." Roy lunged at Jess, his movements unnaturally fast. "You'll ruin everything," he snarled, his voice distorted. Alex tackled him, the two grappling on the ground as Jess continued to strike the machine. The light flickered, and the machine emitted a high-pitched whine. The shadowy figures screamed in unison, their forms twisting and writhing as they were pulled toward the machine. With one final swing, Jess smashed through the machine's core. Sparks flew, and the green light vanished, plunging the basement into darkness. The machinery groaned and collapsed, and the screams of the trapped souls faded into silence. Roy let out an inhuman shriek as his body began to dissolve, his form crumbling into ash. "You fools," he rasped, his voice echoing as he disappeared. "The road never ends." The group scrambled up the stairs as the basement began to cave in. They burst into the garage, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the first rays of dawn broke through the windows. Outside, the RV stood waiting, its engine purring softly. The group climbed in, their breaths ragged as they sped away from the collapsing garage. As they reached the main highway, Emma glanced in the rearview mirror. The garage was gone, replaced by an empty lot. "Did we do it?" she asked. "Are we free?" Alex nodded, though his grip on the wheel remained tight. "I think so," he said, "but we're not stopping until we're far away from here." In the distance, a faint neon glow flickered on the horizon. The group exchanged uneasy glances, their relief tempered by a lingering sense of dread. The climactic revelation blends high-stakes action with chilling truths about the garage, the machine, and Roy's true nature, setting up a haunting resolution. "Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or to move to the next section." The RV tore down the dark highway, its engine roaring as Alex pressed the accelerator to the floor. The road ahead was shrouded in mist, the headlights barely cutting through the dense fog. Inside, the group sat in stunned silence, their hearts pounding from the chaos they had just escaped. "We did it," Jess whispered, clutching the wrench she'd used to destroy the machine. Her hands were shaking, her knuckles scraped raw. "We destroyed the machine. We're free." But the relief in her voice was fleeting. Outside, the fog thickened, and the road seemed to ripple beneath the tires as though it were alive. Emma sat up in her seat, her eyes wide. "Does anyone else feel that?" she asked. Like the road's moving?" Sam leaned forward, his face pale. "It's not over," he said, his voice barely audible. "Roy said the road never ends." Alex gritted his teeth, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. "We're not stopping," he said. "I don't care what happens. We're getting out of here." Without warning, the RV lurched violently to the side, the tires screeching as the road buckled beneath them. The group screamed as the vehicle swerved, narrowly avoiding a massive fissure that had opened up in the asphalt. "What the hell was that?" Jess shouted, clutching the edge of the table to keep from falling. Alex wrestled with the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "The road's trying to stop us," he said. "It doesn't want us to leave." The dashboard lights flickered, and the radio crackled to life. Static filled the cabin, followed by a distorted voice. "You cannot escape." Emma covered her ears, tears streaming down her face. "Make it stop," she cried. "Please make it stop." Jess grabbed the radio, trying to turn it off, but the knob wouldn't budge. The voice grew louder, its tone cold and commanding. "The road demands a passenger." As the RV sped forward, shadowy figures emerged from the mist, their forms flickering like static. They lined the edges of the road, their hollow eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. One stepped onto the pavement, its head tilting unnaturally as it stared at the RV. "Alex, look out!" Sam shouted. Alex swerved, narrowly avoiding the figure, but more appeared ahead, their numbers growing with each passing second. The figures began to close in, their movements jerky and inhuman. "They're everywhere!" Jess screamed, her voice rising in panic. "What do we do?" Alex's mind raced. "Hold on," he shouted, slamming the accelerator to the floor. The RV roared forward, barreling through the shadows. The figures dissolved on impact, their forms disintegrating into wisps of black smoke. The road began to twist and warp, the once straight highway now a labyrinth of impossible turns and endless loops. The RV's headlights flickered, casting eerie patterns on the distorted landscape. "We're going in circles," Emma said, her voice trembling. "I've seen that tree before. We're not getting anywhere." Alex clenched his jaw. "There has to be a way out," he said. "There's always a way out." The radio crackled again, the voice returning. "The road never ends. Choose or stay forever." "What does that mean?" Sam demanded, his eyes darting around the cabin. "What choice?" Jess's gaze fell on the photographs she had taken from the garage. Each picture showed a traveler, their faces frozen in fear. She realized the truth with a sinking feeling. "It wants one of us," she said. "That's the choice. One of us has to stay behind." The realization sent a shockwave through the group. Emma shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "No," she said. "We're not doing that. We're not leaving anyone behind." "And what if we don't have a choice?" Jess asked, her voice breaking. "If we don't do something, we'll all end up like those people in the photos." Sam slammed his fist against the table. "This is insane," he said. "There has to be another way." The RV lurched again, nearly tipping over as the road buckled beneath it. The figures outside began to pound on the windows, their hollow eyes staring hungrily at the group inside. "We don't have time for this," Alex shouted. "We need to decide, now." As the pounding grew louder, Jess stood, her hands trembling. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "I'll stay." Emma grabbed her arm, shaking her head. "No, Jess. You can't. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," Jess said, pulling free. "You all have a chance to get out of here. I'm not going to let this thing take all of us." She opened the RV's door, stepping out into the fog. The shadowy figures turned toward her, their movements slowing as they approached. Jess looked back at the group, a faint smile on her lips. "Go," she said. "Don't look back." Alex hesitated, his hands gripping the wheel. "Jess, go," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. With a heavy heart, Alex slammed the accelerator. The RV sped forward, leaving Jess behind as the shadows closed in around her. As the RV drove on, the mist began to lift, revealing the first light of dawn on the horizon. The figures disappeared, and the road straightened, returning to its normal state. The oppressive weight that had hung over the group was gone, replaced by an eerie silence. Emma sobbed quietly in the back seat, her head in her hands. Sam stared out the window, his expression blank. Alex's knuckles were white as he gripped the wheel, his jaw clenched tightly. "She saved us," Emma whispered. "She saved us all." No one responded. The group was too consumed by their grief and the lingering question of what lay ahead. As the RV approached the next town, the group spotted a familiar neon sign flickering in the distance. 24-hour garage, mechanic on duty. Alex's breath caught in his throat. "No," he said, shaking his head. "It's not possible." The radio crackled to life one final time. "The road never ends," the voice said, cold and final. The RV rolled to a stop as the group stared at the sign, their hope fading into dread. The screen fades to black, leaving viewers with the haunting whisper, "Who's next?" Underscore 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 underscore. The climax delivers a high-stakes confrontation with the road's supernatural forces, an emotional sacrifice, and a chilling twist that ensures the story's tension lingers long after it ends. Let me know if further refinements are needed. The first rays of dawn stretched across the empty highway, painting the asphalt in hues of pale orange and gold. Inside the RV, silence hung heavy over the group. The tension that had gripped them through the night was now replaced by a hollow, aching absence. Jess was gone, and her sacrifice weighed heavily on everyone. Alex stared at the road ahead, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. His mind replayed the last moments at the garage, the shadowy figures closing in on Jess, her voice telling them to go. The memory was sharp, like a wound that refused to heal. Emma sat curled up on the couch, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "She didn't have to do that," she whispered, her voice breaking. "There could have been another way." "No," Alex said, his voice hoarse. "There wasn't. She knew it, and so did we." Sam, slumped in the passenger seat, stared blankly out the window. "But what if it wasn't enough?" he muttered. "What if the road isn't done with us?" After hours of driving in grim silence, the RV rolled into a small town nestled in a valley. The place seemed normal at first glance: quaint houses, a diner with a cheerful neon sign, and a general store with dusty windows. But something about it felt off. The streets were eerily empty, with no sign of life. The wind carried a faint, metallic scent, and the shadows cast by the rising sun seemed too long, too dark. Emma clutched her jacket tighter as they stepped out of the RV. "Where's everyone?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex scanned the street, his unease growing. "Let's just find some supplies and keep moving," he said. "We don't want to stay here any longer than we have to." They entered the diner, the bell above the door jingling softly. The interior was frozen in time, with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner. Plates of half-eaten food sat on tables, the coffee in the cups long cold. A clock on the wall ticked faintly, its hands frozen at 3:17. Sam ran a hand through his hair, his unease mounting. "This place looks like people just disappeared," he said. Emma pointed to a bulletin board near the counter. "Look at this," she said. "It's full of missing persons flyers." The group gathered around the board, their stomachs sinking as they read the names and dates. Many of the flyers were decades old, but some were recent. One in particular caught Alex's eye, a faded photograph of a young woman standing in front of a garage. "Missing, Jessica Carter. Last seen near Millhaven, 2025. Alex's breath hitched. "That's impossible," he said. Just. Emma turned away, her hands trembling. "We need to leave," she said. "Now." As they stepped outside, the faint hum of an engine reached their ears. They froze, their eyes darting around the empty street. The sound grew louder, more distinct, and then they saw it, a tow truck rolling slowly toward them. "No," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "It can't be." The tow truck came to a stop a few feet away, its headlights glaring. The driver's door creaked open, and a figure stepped out. It was Roy, his grin as wide and unnerving as ever. "Miss me?" he asked, his voice dripping with malice. Alex stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You're supposed to be gone," he said. "The machine is destroyed. You can't be here." Roy chuckled, his eyes glinting with the same sickly green light they had seen in the basement. "The road never ends," he said. "You may have broken one piece, but it's part of something much bigger." The group backed away slowly, their minds racing. "If destroying the machine didn't stop this," Sam said, "then what will?" Roy tilted his head, his grin widening. You don't stop the road, he said. You survive it. For now. Emma grabbed Alex's arm. We need to get back to the RV, she said. We can't stay here. As they ran toward the RV, Roy's laughter echoed behind them, mingling with the low rumble of the tow truck's engine. The shadows seemed to lengthen, stretching across the town as though trying to trap them. The RV roared to life as Alex turned the key, and the group sped out of the town, the streets vanishing into the distance. But as they drove, the scenery outside the windows began to shift. The trees looked different, their branches twisted into unnatural shapes. The sky darkened, and the mist returned, swallowing the road ahead. We're back, Sam said, his voice hollow. We never really left. Alex tightened his grip on the wheel, his jaw clenched. We're not stopping, he said. I don't care what it takes. We'll find a way out. Emma sat in the back, turning Jess's locket over in her hands. She hadn't noticed it before, but there was an inscription etched into the metal. To break the cycle, you must remember. What does this mean? She asked, holding it up for the others to see. Alex glanced at it briefly, his brow furrowing. I don't know, he said. But if Jess left it for us, it has to mean something. Sam stared at the locket, his mind racing. Maybe it's about the photos, he said. The people who were claimed, they were forgotten. Maybe remembering them is the key. The group decided to stop running. They would document everything they had experienced, the road, the garage, Roy, and Jess's sacrifice. They gathered the photographs, the ledger, and the locket, piecing together the fragments of the mystery. If we can warn others, Alex said, maybe we can stop this from happening to anyone else. Emma nodded, her expression resolute. Jess didn't sacrifice herself for nothing, she said. We owe it to her to keep going. Months later, the group sat in a small diner, poring over their notes. They had driven thousands of miles, visiting every place connected to the road's dark history. But no matter how far they went, the shadows never fully disappeared. As they prepared to leave, the radio in the diner crackled to life. Static filled the air, followed by a familiar voice. You thought you could escape? The road never ends. The group exchanged tense glances, their determination unwavering. They stepped outside, the RV waiting for them like a loyal sentinel. The camera pans to the sky as they drive off, leaving viewers with the haunting realization that their journey is far from over. The faint glow of a neon sign flickers in the distance. 24-hour garage, mechanic on duty. The resolution ties up immediate loose ends while leaving the story open-ended, maintaining a sense of dread and lingering mystery. Let me know if you'd like further refinements or to explore another direction.